What's up, collectors? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season. 2022 has come to an end, and that means it's time to check out our Letterboxd stats. So I got on a call with my good friend Connor, and we had a really fun conversation going over and looking back at everything we watched in this past year. I hope you enjoy it. Let's check it out. All right, guys, let's talk about our Letterboxd stats. I've got Connor Nielsen with me. Again, good to have you as always, buddy. Are you ready to talk about what you watched this year?
I am. I always like looking at these stats. I always forget about them until right before the end of the year. I like making predictions on who my most watched director, who my most watched actor. It's always a fun hobby to kind of just scroll through these and look at your trends and habits. And honestly, I haven't looked at this really yet. I'm curious to know what it looks like.
Sweet. So this will be a reveal for you. I have looked through this a little bit. That's actually what gave me the idea to make this video. Reached out to you, and you were game to do this. I think it'll be interesting. I think we'll have very different results just because we have different goals right now for what we're doing, I guess, different interests these days. I know you watch a lot more new stuff. I am going to breeze right past that section because I haven't watched anything from this year. I think I've only watched 12 movies that came out in 2022. So I'll let you talk about that section. But there's some sections on here that I found interesting, and I'm curious to hear what your results are. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to quickly talk about this little infographic here at the top. 2022, look at that. I like the way this is laid out, by the way. Good job, Letterboxd. I'd love to work for you. If you have any UI positions open, I'm a designer, so I know you're listening. I know you watch all our videos. So I watched 298 films this year, 298 diary entries, only 19 reviews. That'll be a big difference between me and you because I don't review anything and you review everything you watch almost, I think. And I created 14 lists. So it's only 325 watch hours. Those of you who are quick at math, 298 films, 325 watch hours. That doesn't make any sense. It's because a lot of those are short films. I watched a lot of animated short films from like the 20s and 30s with my kids this year, and the 40s, I think. So that really skewed all my numbers and kind of messed up my most watched directors and most watched actors too later, as you'll see. So we'll talk about that. But I watched a lot of short films. I've been getting really into shorts. I wish there was a way I could like run my results without shorts. Maybe there is. Let me know in the comments if there is. But yeah, those are my main call outs at the top part. How many films did you watch this year?
So I have 251 diary entries, but 253 reviews. And this is because there was one or two that I didn't do a review for, but I also sometimes, there'll be a page available for a movie that hasn't come out yet, and you can still log something. So if I think of something kind of funny to say, it's amusing to me, I will just write I don't list it as like a diary entry. So I erase the date off of it. I don't like give it a like or anything. I just like write something with no star rating, and that'll be it. So like for Dune Part 2, I have that. For Barbie, I have that. And then for the longest time, I had because Barbie's going to be the best movie of 2023. Just want everyone to know that. And then we have something like Avatar: The Way of Water. Before that came out, I was like, hey, James is cool. James has always been cool, which is a Twin Peaks reference couched in an Avatar review, and then that somehow became my most liked post. Internet's weird, man.
That's how it happens, man. My most liked list was a complete joke list that I made that I'll talk about later.
Well, speaking of lists, I only made 6 lists, and I don't know how many of those are even like publicly available. I'll make a lot of lists that I just keep private until like I'm finished with it.
Yeah, same. I don't like to release it when I'm like still watching things and still haven't even got it in the right order yet. So I do the same thing.
I have a compulsion for making lists.
Same.
But that made up for 478.4 hours watched.
Wow. Yeah. So your watch hours are way past mine, even though I have more diary entries. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm probably still going to watch shorts this year too. So there's no avoiding it. There's no avoiding, unless I just don't log shorts. I guess I could do that. I guess I could just not.
I don't log shorts. That's something I just don't do. I feel like I've thought about it from time to time, but I just don't do it.
Then the next section is the 2022 films that you've seen. Like I said, I've only seen 12, and I think I only liked 2 or 3 of them. And even those I didn't love. So I couldn't begin to put together a top 10. So I'll let you talk about that section a little bit. What were some of your favorite movies you watched this year?
Well, I only saw about 38 new release movies this year. And a lot of them are just, just basic bell curve is like most of them are going to be just kind of okay.
Yeah.
Mediocre, maybe okay, and maybe there were certainly some terrible stuff I saw this year. Morbius, obviously.
That was this year? Oh, that feels like forever ago.
Yeah, I'll never forget Morbius. That came out the weekend I moved apartments.
You kind of looked like Morbius.
Oh no, I look like Jared Leto. First I'm Jimmy Fallon, then I'm Jared Leto.
You can't win. No,
can't catch a break.
It's very general look of the hair. You don't actually look like him.
So my top 10, like my number 10, I would give a thumbs up to, probably like a 7 out of 10. But there was only a small number of movies that I loved. I would say I really would very passionately recommend a top 3.
Yeah.
But just to kind of run down my top 10, number 10 was The Batman. Number 9 was Barbarian. Number 8 was The Black Phone. 7, The Banshees of Inisherin. 6, Pearl. Number 5 is The Northman. Number 4 is 3,000 Years of Longing. Number 3 is Glass Onion. Number 2 is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was my number 1 for a very long time. And the number 1 was actually Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, which I loved with all my heart. So that was what I watched, and it should obviously go without saying that as award season kicks up with the new year, I'm going to be going back and watching a lot of stuff that I missed. So this top 10 is probably going to look very different. I mean, I can see Everything Everywhere All at Once and Glass Onion still being in the top 10. Everything Everywhere probably still in the top 5 by the time I get through everything. But that being said, I don't see something like 3,000 Years of Longing being in my top 10, even though I did really like that movie. It isn't Fury Road, which was Miller's last movie, but I did really like it. So
most of the stuff I saw this year was from years past. I am going to catch up, though. Me and my wife are planning on watching all of the awards contenders before awards happen. And so I really want to see, like I said, I really wanted to see 10,000 Years of Longing. I really want to see The Fabelmans. I really, really want to see The Banshees of Inisherin. So yeah, there's a lot of films that I really want to see from this year, but I don't have time to go to the theaters as much. And so I usually just wait for them to come to streaming, unfortunately, these days. But I know that's blasphemy because I'm a physical media collector, but I have 2 small kids, and one of them was potty training this last week, so there's no way I'm getting to a theater. All right. The next thing here is Milestones. I thought this was really interesting. Maybe you'll have interesting answers for this. My first film that I watched for the entire year was Tick, Tick, Boom. I think that was my first time watching it. It was January 2nd. That's a 2021 movie. So it'll be the same thing this year where the 2022 movies will carry into the next year before award season. And then my last film was The French Dispatch. I watched it on December 31st. These 2 films will show up a little bit later. Actually, we'll talk about it right now because it says most watched films. These are also my most watched films because these are 2 of my absolute favorite films from 2021. I love Tick, Tick, Boom. It's a crime that I'll never be able to get a physical copy of it. I hate it. I already brought that up on our video where we talked about movies that need physical releases. I love that movie. And then I love The French Dispatch, which is weird because the first time I watched it, I think I gave it 3.5 stars, maybe 3. The second time I watched it, I gave it 4 stars. This last time I watched it, I gave it 4.5 stars. It's growing on me, dude. It's so perfectly crafted, and you notice so many things every time you watch it. I've been listening to the score for the last few days. Can't get it out of my head. French Dispatch is wonderful. I love it. And Tick, Tick, Boom. So what was your first and last film of the year?
My Milestones, it was interesting because usually I'm watching movies all the time. And it's interesting that my first movie was on the 4th. So I waited a few days before actually watching anything this year. And my friend Rory was showing me and his roommate, who's another friend of mine, he showed us what is his favorite movie, which is Paul Schrader's Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, which I actually got when I was in...
when you were here, you picked it up.
Yeah. So really good movie. I think that's been gaining momentum in terms of film school cred. It's been kind of building up a reputation. It's really good. And then this last movie that I watched of the year is going to play into a different topic that we're going to talk about, which is my New Year's resolution for 2022. I had 3 of them. My one movie related was I wanted to watch every single Orson Welles film that he directed. And that was the one that was the one New Year's resolution I failed. It was the easiest one, right? Like
you just have to plop yourself down.
Movies.
Yeah, just plop on a couch and watch them. No, but you did some much harder things, so.
Yeah, but so my last film was Touch of Evil, which is the Orson Welles directed film starring Charlton Heston, Janet Leigh, and Orson Welles.
The beautiful 4K Kino Lorber release. Do you have that?
No, I have the Universal Blu-ray, but it's a really good-looking Blu-ray. Like,
cool.
Oh my God, they kept that thing looking good. I watched the preview version of it before it got bastardized because, it's an Orson Welles movie after 1941, so that's getting gutted by studios. But they found the preview version before they gutted it, so that's cool. Great movie, by the way. So that's why, like, it's not F for Fake. It's not The Other Side of the Wind. I got up to Touch of Evil, and then I ran out of time. So, but regarding most watched, a lot of these are movies that I have, like, of my top 5 most watched. 4 of them were movies that I watched for the first time this year, and I kept watching. I watched The Seventh Seal for the first time this year. I ended up watching it 3 times.
Wow.
And then my second, third, and fourth movies were Andrei Tarkovsky's 1966 film Andrei Rublev, Paul Verhoeven's 1995 film Showgirls, and then George Lucas's 1973 film American Graffiti, which I saw twice each. I really like all of those movies. I think Andrei Rublev is one of the best things ever. So I'm glad I got to get that in a second time before the year ended. Yeah, those are my milestones.
Sweet. I'll quickly talk about my most watched because I didn't mention the other 3. I watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory twice. I showed it to my kids in the theater this year. I also watched it with my friend from the Geekvolution YouTube channel that I did a video with. He bought his first Criterions this year, and we watched Willy Wonka while he was here because it's one of our favorites. And also watched The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad twice because that's always a great one to watch with the kids. Early Walt Disney Animation Studios, and it's also one that you watch every Halloween, Christmas time because there's 2 shorts, and one is during Halloween and one is during Christmas. And then I also watched Zodiac twice because, speaking of the Geekvolution YouTube channel, I did a commentary on Zodiac over there with Captain Logan. So I watched it once before the commentary, and then we watched it together and talked about it. And that is a really good movie, really good David Fincher movie that I'm glad I watched. I'm not really a true crime fan, but I don't want to say it's a really cool story because it's horrible, but just very interesting story and very well told. All right, moving on. I don't know if you've filled out this section, but you can tag some lists here in this next section. I tagged my Guillermo del Toro ranking, my Wes Anderson ranking, my Spooktober list that you and I did together, and then my Christmas 2022 watch list. So not really much to talk about there. I wanted to do a full video about everything I watched in December because I actually got through a lot of new Christmas movies this year, but I won't bog down this video with that kind of stuff. I just really like how they lay out your lists there with the rankings and the banner. This is making me want to become a patron so I can have those banner images on my lists and so I can pick custom posters and stuff. Our mutual friend John is a patron, and he's been talking it up. I think it's like $50 a year instead of we're paying $20 now, right? I don't know. Maybe it's worth it. Who knows? I
don't have any featured lists, but I will make a point to put my Orson Welles list there because even though it was my failed New Year's resolution, I did watch that and I did rank what I did see.
And then the next section is genres, countries, and languages, which I have some beef with because this is not... Partially it's my fault because I watched a ton of animated shorts from Disney and Warner Brothers. So obviously my animation one is huge with 159 films. But comedy, I did not watch more comedies than anything else. It always does that. Like if you go to the bottom of a film and click on the genres, like everything puts comedy there. I need them to get more specific with their genres because not everything is a comedy. Like it says I watched 103 comedies. Some of those are animated shorts, but a lot of those, like, I'll click on it. You can click on it.
Yep.
Like Klaus. I wouldn't consider Klaus a comedy. The French Dispatch, I guess, is Metropolitan. Mon Oncle Antoine, I would definitely not consider a comedy. Like, I don't know. They're playing loose with their genres. So I think that section's kind of useless to me. I don't know if I can pull anything
that's
from
interesting
that
to
section.
me because comedy is like listed fourth. I watched 47 comedies apparently, and like 43 horror movies, and like 43 thrillers. So like they were all like right on it. And I imagine those 43 horrors and thrillers are the same 43 movies.
Same movies.
But yeah, drama was my number one. I watched like 157 dramas. That's no surprise because if you look at my language break or country breakdown, obviously USA and English taking up the lion's share. But right below it, Sweden.
Oh,
right
yeah, because you stacked it
Japan.
with... Yeah, because you did 2 marathons, a Swedish one and a Japanese one.
Yep. Well, and what's funny is that if we go back up to films by week, what's interesting is I did watch, there were more than like 1 week. I think there was 3 or 4 different weeks where I only saw 1 movie in a week. But if you notice here, there's this spike where I just watched a ton of movies in that week for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. That's when I was binging Bergman.
That would be the Bergman binge. That's what you should call it.
Yes.
This is the most nerdy video. This is going to get 5 views. No one cares about this. So this is so self-indulgent. But another thing I have an issue with this is the second one is countries, which I think is also useless because any movie that was like filmed there, you could have went there and filmed for like a day and it puts France. Like if you click on France, obviously some French movies that pop up, but a Goofy movie pops up from Disney.
Really?
Like,
Okay.
So it's like super not helpful. Like I'm like, oh, I watched a movie from that country. Oh no, it's just like a mainstream movie that they shot like second unit in one of these countries. But I do think this is actually the most interesting part of this section, the language. I found this very useful in thinking about my movie goals for this year and how many foreign films I can fit in, which we'll talk about maybe in another video. But obviously English, way out there. But interestingly, 14 French films I watched this year. I went in on the French. That sounds weird.
You've been going in on the French for a while.
I love the French. Jacques Demy. I got the Jacques Demy box set. I got the Jacques Tati box set. I got the Eric Romer box set. Like, I think I might be a French film connoisseur.
And the French Dispatch is one of your new favorites.
It's so good. And there's so much French music in that movie. How in the world does Wes Anderson soundtrack his films? Like, does he just do a ton of research when he's making a movie, or does he just know all this music? Like, have you ever listened to one of his soundtracks? They're so cool, so diverse.
I have not really listened to it.
He puts together these soundtracks that are he's kind of like Edgar Wright in that way. But I think even more so. Like he pulls stuff from like every genre and every era. Like it's crazy. I love his soundtracks. Listen to the French Dispatch soundtrack. Everybody.
Did you, like, with the Sight and Sound poll that just came out, did you look at Wes Anderson's ballot?
I didn't. I need to.
He was like, oh, I'm in France right now, so I'm just going to pick 10 French movies as like his ballot. So he's your guy. Wes Anderson is your guy.
That's amazing. All right. So yeah, 14 French films was second to English. 10 Japanese films. Spooktober came in and helped me out a little bit there. I watched a lot of Japanese films in October. Then I watched 5 Spanish films with the little Guillermo del Toro and Almodovar. And then 5 Italian films, all coming from your boy Pasolini. Watched a lot of Pasolini films this year. And then 4 German, 3 Czech, 2 Cantonese, 2 Danish, and 2 Russian. So good spread with French and Japanese taking the lead there. But yeah, I think that section is very interesting. I like that section a lot.
Yeah, at least for me, like when it comes to that's why the language. I'm glad they include the language stuff because I think it's easy for someone to like look at the countries and think. When you look at countries, what you're thinking is actually the language tab.
Yeah, that's what you're thinking.
Yeah. So obviously, I had 159 English, 42 Swedish. They were all made by the same guy. So Ingmar Bergman, Bingmar. And then you have, 36 Japanese movies. 26 of those were Zatoichi movies. And then 4 French, 3 Russian, 2 Italian, 2 German, 2 Cantonese, and 1 Korean. So
sweet. Yeah. This is the breakdown. The next section here is the breakdown and you could see my 2022 new releases versus other. The smallest, tiniest little sliver, that's my 2022 movies. So, like I said, 12 out of the 298 were from this year. Everything else was older. Same thing, watches versus rewatches. I did not rewatch much this year. It's a little bit bigger of a sliver. The vast majority is new things that I watched. And then about the same as the first sliver, my reviews. I've got to get better about reviews. So there it is, tiny little sliver for reviewed versus not reviewed. Because I don't know, man. I feel like I don't have anything interesting to say, but I really do want to start reviewing. Just because I get overwhelmed, I look and there's like 1,000 reviews and these people are all like saying these super in-depth things. And I'm like, I'm not going to add anything to this conversation, but I really do want to get into reviews because I just want to log like my own feelings when I watch something so that when I go back, because I'm watching so many things, sometimes I forget like how I felt about something. And if I can at least log my own experience with it, then I'll have a bit better memory of it. And I can at least look back on that and have that if I ever want to rewatch it or something. So at least I'm talking to myself. I need to get it out of my head that anyone cares what I'm going to say, and I just need to talk to myself in those reviews, like a journal.
Well, that's been my philosophy the entire time. Is like these reviews are for me, like because like you said, I watched a lot of these. I kind of forget, I remember virtually every detail about this weird 2016 movie called The Ninth Life of Louis Drax. I remember Aaron Paul, is that his name? Jesse from Breaking Bad.
I think
he plays Swamp Thing in that movie. Like I remember all of that, but I don't remember hardly anything else about like any other 2016 movie. And so it's like that was before I was on Letterboxd. So like a lot of my reviews from like 2017, 2018 when I was first on the site, they suck and you shouldn't read them. But like it's helpful for me to like go back and read those overwritten, poor sentence structured reviews because it helps me like remember what my like when I was watching those, like kind of what my thought process was, when it breaks down. But yeah, so when it comes to mine, I have, I would say a solid eighth, maybe a little bit more than an eighth, less than a quarter, were newer releases, 2022. I did a healthy amount of rewatches, not a lot, but, similar distribution. But speaking of it, I have the inverse of you when it comes to the reviewed versus non-reviewed, because
wow,
it's like a huge chunk of the pie. And then I think there's only like one or two that I didn't review. And then what I like looking at is the ratings spread, the little bell curve that they give you.
Yeah, that's really cool. Mine, I'm assuming, is probably where yours is, just considering the things we both watch and the way we kind of review. Mine is majority 3.5 to 4. Actually, you watch a lot more bad things, so maybe you do have a different spread. But I've been mostly watching like revered things, so mine kind of goes up. It's like lower in the 5 to 4.5, and then it kind of goes up to 3.5 to 4 in the middle.
Yeah, my 3.5 is the much tallest one there.
Yeah.
And then like I have a little bit more 4s than I do 3s. But I think I hit a new record, though, because I had 4 5 stars, which I'm very stingy with my 5 stars. I'm very stingy with my half stars. But I did give 4 5-star things. So that's kind of cool.
All right. Well, moving on to watch list. So this is where we just feel bad about ourselves because, first of all, hey, I watched 47 things from my watch list.
Nice.
I added 164. So it's like it's like a one step forward, 3 steps back. So yeah, a lot of stuff to get to, but that's good because I got a lot of years left. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Knock on wood. Have a lot of years to watch those things. But yeah, I've been adding a lot of things this year. Been finding some really cool things, and but hey, knocked out 47, and I haven't even been doing that on purpose. That's what's fun about this. We look at the end of the year. Like I don't often go through my watch list and like pick something. I just pick whatever I'm feeling that night. So I didn't even think I got through 47 on my watch list. That's pretty good.
Yeah, the watch list feature is not something I use all that often either. But I watched 58. There was like just one day where I just went through every single movie that was in my Blu-ray collection. If I hadn't seen it, it went on my watch list. And so I've been watching through. I've been making an effort to watch more of the stuff I own because it's taking up space in my space. Like yeah. I should probably watch it. And so,
either like it or not like it and get rid of it.
Yep, pretty much. So I watched 58 and then I added 73. So that was very much one step forward, two steps back kind of thing. But yeah.
All right, so this is where things are going to get a little wonky, and this is probably the last thing we're going to talk about. This is the most watched actors. Now, my most watched actors got completely derailed by two things I did last year. One, as I mentioned before, was the ton of animated shorts I watched. So Walt Disney is the number one watched actor because he voiced Mickey Mouse in the early days, and I watched a ton of Mickey Mouse shorts. So he's at 10 films right there at the top. Number two is Bill Murray, because what did I do this year? I watched all of Wes Anderson's movies. And what does Wes Anderson do? He casts the same people in every single movie, and Bill Murray is always there. So not a huge Bill Murray fan, but I love him in Wes Anderson movies. And so I saw 8 films with Bill Murray in it this year. Same thing with Jason Schwartzman. Same thing with Owen Wilson. Same thing with Willem Dafoe, Adrian Brody. All those guys right there at the top. Yeah, my list is basically just Wes Anderson alum. Actually, that's interesting. James Hong. 4 films from James Hong, which are Everything Everywhere All at Once, obviously. And then Turning Red. He was in 2 movies this year. And 2 of my 12 2022 movies that I saw he was in. And then I showed my son Kung Fu Panda this year, and I showed him Milan. And he's in both of those. He's a little bit typecast in movies about China, apparently. But yeah, that is James Hong. And then another guy, so Ninetto Divoli, who is in 4 of the 5 Pasolini films I watched. He really liked that actor and used him a lot. Even though he mostly uses non-actors, he always pulled in Mr. Divoli. So yeah, not very interesting because of my skewed numbers. But yeah, those are my numbers. That's what I got. What do you got? So
this is like no surprise. Like I was like willing to put money on this. However, looking at the competition was steeper than I gave it credit for. So my number 1 is Shintaro Katsu, who plays Ichi in the Zatoichi movies.
All of them?
All of them.
Oh, so he's obvious. He's got 26?
Yeah, 26 of those movies. Like,
wow. So no contest. 2 of them?
No contest. But like looking back, but I did watch a lot of Ingmar Bergman movies, and his Wes Anderson, he casts a lot of the same actors. It's like he's like a theater troupe kind of thing.
Very much the same with Wes Anderson. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Where it's like, in one movie, like if you watch, The Devil's Eye, that guy and B.B. Anderson are like father and daughter, and then you watch The Seventh Seal and they're like married, and it's like just theater minded thing of like, all right, who do we got? You're playing this role and you're playing that role. Like, it doesn't matter if there's an age gap or not. Like, you're gonna be playing his daughter. My number 1 is Shintaro Katsu. No surprise there. By the way, his performance as Ichi is wonderful. One of my favorite like movie heroes. He's so great. But number 2 is Gunnar Bjornstrand, one of Ingmar Bergman's go-to guy. That's 17. Erland Josephson at 13 films. B.B. Anderson at 12 films. Max von Sydow at 11 films. Liv Ullmann, the best actress of all time, at 10. Harriet Anderson at 10. Jun Katsumura at 10. And then Orson Welles at 9. If I would have finished my doggone thing, Orson Welles would be higher.
You let him down, man. You could have got him higher.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Wells. Forgive him. He's only human.
I am.
Yeah. So you
Papa Wells, who art in heaven, please forgive me.
So yeah, neither of us have very interesting results there. But that we did. You did 2 marathons. I did a couple director filmographies. I'm surprised. I guess Del Toro doesn't do that as often. Because I watched a lot of Del Toro movies this year, but I didn't.
Ron Perlman wasn't on here?
No, but I guess I didn't. I had already seen a good bit of Del Toro. So I didn't watch as many of his films this year. So maybe that's why it was. All right. Again, I'm a broken record. My directors is the same thing. Those animated shorts are directed by the same directors quite often. I'll only mention the feature directors because a lot of the shorts, even the ones like Fantasia and a lot of the Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros, those early package films that were filmed for Disney during World War II had different directors for each of the shorts. So even those aren't really feature directors either. So I'll skip down to my number 1, technically, with Wes Anderson at 8 films, Guillermo del Toro at 5 films, Pasolini at 5 films, Eric Rohmer at 4 films. I watched 4 out of the 6 Moral Tales. I've got to get to those other 2 this year. More French films, yay! And Pedro Almodovar, I watched the 3 films that he has currently in the Criterion Collection. Great movies. Another one. All these are like my favorite filmmakers as I'm going down this. And then Don Bluth. I watched 3 Don Bluth films this year. Had to catch up on some of his stuff. Had never seen any of his stuff. I know a lot of people grew up with his movies, and that's a really big part of their childhood. So I watched Anastasia, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and Thumbelina for the first time this year. And Anastasia is a really good animated film.
Okay, good to know.
Up there with some of the best Disney films, in my opinion. I thought it was really good. So yeah, there we go. A little bit of Pasolini, a little bit of Almodovar. Obviously, Guillermo del Toro and Wes Anderson, because I finished their filmographies this year. But yeah, an interesting year for sure. What do you have? Obviously, you've got your 2 marathons
like
again.
This is one of those things where it's like, my number 1 is so obvious. Like, it's not just like, oh, which director did you watch the most of this year? It's like, I have like no other director I've seen comes close to the amount that I've seen of Ingmar Bergman now. I've seen 42 Ingmar Bergman movies.
I cannot imagine doing that in a year, let alone a month like you did, you madman.
Yeah, 29 days. It's like
lunatic.
Point me in the direction of a person who's made 42 movies. I mean, there's John Ford, but so many of his work is lost. There's Alfred Hitchcock, who made like 52 that are still alive. I think 1 or 2 of his has been lost, but like, yeah. Ingmar Bergman. There you go. That's number 1. One of like a man who's on my personal Mount Rushmore is Richard Linklater. And early on in the year, I kind of just got on a Linklater kick because
you did. I remember that.
I love him. I saw 8 of his movies.
Wow.
And then 3rd is Orson Welles. I watched 8 of his. In October, I had never seen any of this guy's movies, and I just got curious, and I watched 6 Rob Zombie movies.
Oh, wow!
And then from there, it is just a lot of the Zatoichi filmmakers, those workhorse over at Daiei Films. You have Kimiyoshi Yasuda, Kenji Masumi, Tozuko Tanaka. But then you also have like Hiroshi Inagaki. I saw like his Musashi Miyamoto Samurai trilogy. I watched 4 Kurosawa movies, which this is the first time I ever broached Kurosawa. And I watched the Rocky movies, which means I watched 4 films directed by Sylvester Stallone himself. So that was my list.
So yeah, a little bit more of a diverse spread there. The next section is called Crew and Studios. It's very granular, and I don't think we need to get too far into those. But I mentioned this briefly earlier. My most liked review was my review of Coda at the beginning of the year. And my most liked list was my Old McDonald's Cinematic Universe list. Do you remember that?
Wow. When did you make that?
It was shortly after the beginning of the year, because in the year before, a movie called Cow, Pig, Lamb, and Dog came out. Which I thought was just so weird and random. And so I made a goofy list, and at least a few people got a chuckle out of it. I know you liked it.
That was funny.
It was a fun. I don't know what I was doing that day. Clearly nothing important, but that was fun. This next section, highs and lows, is interesting. It has nothing to do with me or you. It's just like movies you watched that have the highest review overall and then the lowest review overall. So it's kind of interesting. Obviously, Everything Everywhere All at Once was the movie I watched that has the highest review. And Frosty Returns is the movie that has the lowest average review on Letterboxd, which, hot take, Frosty Returns is better than Frosty, the first one, guys. It is. Frosty is a terrible Christmas kids movie that we should not be showing our kids every year because it's terrible. Frosty Returns is better. John Goodman is Frosty in Returns. There's an actual plot. The villain is much better. I mean, it ain't great. It's still about like I think I still gave it like a 2, but it's better than Frosty. It's better than the original Frosty. Sorry, guys. And then the most popular movie I watched this year was The Batman, of course. And then the most obscure movie I watched doesn't even have an image. It is called Ye Old Toy Shop, which is a Christmas cartoon from 1935 that was later reused in a cartoon short where they added a little skit scene at the beginning that was in live action before the father told the kids the story when they were like going to sleep on Christmas Eve. And then they just repurposed this original cartoon. But I didn't want to do that. I watched the original, and I didn't want to just mark down that remake that came out like a decade later. So Ye Old Toy Shop.
but that does not have any. I saw that you like logged that. I'm like, whoa, has no reviews. You can monopolize the review space, man.
I should, and I even have an interesting little tidbit to say about it right there because it was reused, and a lot of people that watch it probably watched that other version that was reused later.
Yeah.
So that was by far the most obscure thing I watched this year. What was your most liked and most obscure?
So my most liked review was, as I said, my Avatar: Way of Water. Before I even watched the movie of James Cameron is cool. James Cameron has always been cool, which is Twin Peaks season 3 reference.
Of course.
And then I got 12 likes out of that. I don't know how, but I did. I guess enough people anticipating Avatar were familiar with Twin Peaks to do so. Hey, if there's any place where that's going to happen, it might as well be Letterboxd. My most liked list was my Ingmar Bergman ranking list, but instead of just calling it like Ingmar Bergman ranked, I call it All the Sad Swedes. All the Sad Swedes.
Well, good for you. I'm glad that you got some recognition for doing that insane thing that you did that month. I'm glad.
I guess I should shout out to my brother because he's a braver man than I, dabbles in Twitter. And he had tagged Criterion and Letterboxd of like, oh, hey, like my brother and I did this thing. And Letterboxd retweeted it. And
wow.
Criterion liked it. And so he got a lot of traction, like over 1,000 responses off of that. So I got like an influx of followers on Letterboxd. And I think it was around that time that I put that list up, which is probably why I got some really any attention I got. I should thank my great brother Spencer for that.
For braving Twitter to talk to Criterion. Wow. Well, cool. That's really cool.
And then as far as high and lows, the highest rated thing I watched in the community was Fanny and Alexander. That has a 4.5. It's like in that 2001 A Space Odyssey tier of like, okay, this is like on another level. Like it's almost like it doesn't even feel like you're watching a movie. Like it's just so perfectly distilled. And then the lowest average is Dragon Wars, D-War. You ever hear of this?
No. Is it better than Frosty Returns?
It's this 2007 movie that's like a South Korean movie that got to shoot in LA. Like it's a trip.
Remember when you watched this. Why did you watch this?
Because I have a podcast with a friend of mine and it had a Twin Peaks actor in it. So we had to watch it.
You got to watch all the Twin Peaks stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah, Robert Forster, God bless him, is in that. He sounds like he could not care at all. So anyways, the most popular movie that I watched was I decided to give Joker another watch this year because I remember when that came out, there was like all this frenzy of people who loved that movie and people who hated that movie. And I watched it and I was like, I mean, I guess it was okay. And then I just kind of forgot about it. So I decided to give it another watch to see how I felt about it. And my response was, it's okay.
The same.
And so, but I have to thank you for the most obscure movie I watched.
Oh, yeah.
Which is Lucky 7.
Lucky 7. What an amazing movie.
I'm glad I logged that because if I hadn't logged that, I'm pretty sure I would have thought it was a crazy dream I had.
Yeah, we actually meant to shoot. We did. We shot. I can show some of it. I don't think I'm going to release the whole commentary though because you were in and out. Like you were falling asleep. It was like 2 a.m. when we shot that. I don't think it'll be entertaining enough but I might like cut snippets from it. But yeah, we recorded that watch through. It was.
I had a good time, man.
That's a crazy movie. Check out Lucky 7. It's called 7 Lucky Ninja Kids in America if you have like the dubbed version of it, but it's a Japanese film. Crazy martial arts kids kung fu movie.
But it's my new most obscure movie of all time that I've seen. It was, I think, like Legend of the Lone Ranger or some like crappy like religious movie that I had like logged when I was watching everything in theaters, like 90 Minutes in Heaven or some crap like that. God's Not Dead 2 or whatever. But now it's Lucky 7, so.
Nice. Well, I'm glad I could help you there. I topped Lucky 7 this year with Ye Old Toy Shop. And yeah, that concludes our stats. And then at the very end, they top it off with the map, which I think I sent to you the other day. I'm pretty happy with my spread this year. I've got, obviously, US is the darkest, but I've got some stuff from South America, Australia, even the tip of Africa, Europe, obviously, and then India. And I watched a couple Chinese and Russian films. I'm not sure why they're not showing up on my map. I don't know. Fix your map feature, Letterboxd. But yeah, that's cool. That's like the same thing as the languages section. That's pretty interesting to see, just like where you're spreading your wings and watching stuff. Hopefully I can hit some of those corners this year. And I haven't seen anything from like the Middle East or any of that area.
I really want to make a point to watch more Central and South American films. Just like as far as availability, we don't get a lot of African films here. And I remember like you can just look at, you can just like on the world map, just click on countries and see just all the movies that are on Letterboxd that are released in that country. And I think something like Ethiopia only has like 50 something movies like that you can watch or something. Like that's crazy. So obviously that's not going to show up as dark on your map as something like the US, where we put out hundreds and hundreds of movies a year. But
yeah,
can I ask you a question?
Only 53 films from Greenland that we can watch.
Wow.
Got to get on those Greenland films. Sure, ask me a question. Ask away.
What would you say are the best movies that you watched for the first time in 2022?
Oh my, what? I don't have a stat for that. How am I supposed to recall that?
Well, no, just looking back at it, like what you can recall, like what was like that you watched it for the first time this year. That was great. I like that.
Yeah. See, I'm terrible when I'm put on the spot like this. I will say that I had a very interesting experience with Pasolini. I don't know if I loved any of his movies, but because I kept talking to you about it, I could not get his movies out of my head for weeks. Really liked his Trilogy of Life, and also Teorema, which I think was my favorite. Almodovar, I think if you want some, especially the first two. The third one is probably the third one I watched them in release order. So Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and then Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, and then All About My Mother. Especially the first two. If you want a date night with your wife, we had some of the best date nights this year watching his movies. They are hilarious. They are so colorful and beautiful. He uses color like more than any other director I've seen, maybe Jacques Demy. But they're awesome, wonderful date night movies. Very, very funny, and also just really interesting and fun to talk about. But I will say, speaking of Demy, the Young Girls of Rochefort blew us away. That was like, it instantly jumped up to the top of our musicals list. Like it is one of our absolute favorite musicals now. Speaking of movies I watched with my wife, we both absolutely adored that film, and it might be one of the best musicals we've ever seen. It's freaking awesome. I know everybody talks about Umbrellas, but Young Girls is, and I understand it's a little more crowd pleasy than Umbrellas is. Umbrellas takes I don't want to spoil anything about either of them, but it's probably more cool to like Umbrellas more. But Young Girls is amazing, and I freaking loved every second of it.
Well, wonderful. I'm gonna get the Jacques Demy Criterion set sometime soon. I was gonna probably get that in November, but then I ended up getting the Jacques Tati set. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for myself,
go ahead.
Andrei Rublev, Persona is probably, I think, the best Bergman film. Obviously, The Magician and Seventh Seal and Fanny and Alexander are also like God tier. Autumn Sonata, Cries and Whispers, The Magic Flute. Like I could just name like a bunch of Bergman stuff. But I watched Seven Samurai for the first time.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
obviously incredible. I also watched American Graffiti for the first time and like kind of got acquainted with really early George Lucas, and 70s George Lucas really is one of the best filmmakers ever. Like it's a shame that Star Wars kind of traumatized him in the director's chair anyways. But American Graffiti is like, oh, my favorite film genre. This is where it comes from. George Lucas made it. I never would have guessed that. So people should seek that out.
Yeah, I'm sure I will think of many more things. Maybe we should have done that. Top 10 first watches. Maybe that's a video we can still do. But yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, because I'm sure there's a lot more things. As soon as I hit stop recording, I'll think of, and I'm like, dang it, I should have mentioned that.
No, it's like you're saying, like, what were the best movies of the year? And it's like, well, I spent so much of the time watching other old stuff, So it's To me, that's right. As of right now, that's the more interesting question because
absolutely.
I watched like less than 40.
Yeah, I watched 12 films from this year, and I was pretty disappointed by most of them. So yeah, I'm glad I watched a lot of older stuff. I'm going to continue to do that this year. We're going to get back together and film another video about our movie watching resolutions for this year for 2023. This was helpful to look back at this year, and then we'll look on to the next year and see what we want to watch in this upcoming year. So stick around, tune back in for that video. I'm gonna have Connor back in again for that one, and we'll talk about 2023 a little bit. But thanks for talking about 2022. Thanks for looking back, Connor. Always great to have you. Hope you had fun.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for even thinking about doing this. Great idea.
Thank you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it too, and we will be back with that next video very soon.